Let's kick it off. I'm sure that people who are going to be joining later will be joining later. We are also recording the session, so we'll be able to share it with everyone later on. But first things first, thanks everyone here who joined us here today. I'll go first through a little bit of housekeeping, just to kind of walk you through how we're going to be holding the session. I'll start off with a quick introduction about myself, about TaxScouts. We'll talk about in general as to why and how we started the business. Most of it and some of it you probably would have heard, but I think it's worth having a quick recap. I'll try to get it done within 5-10 minutes tops. And then the idea is to open up the conversation for a Q&A, and I will try to answer all of the questions that are coming in. The way to raise your questions, at the bottom of your screen, you should be seeing a Q&A section. Just basically type in the question there. I'm going to be answering them as they come in. I'm sure that there may be questions that I won't be able to answer or I won't be able to get to, and we will be following up with those questions separately, either on the CrowdQ platform or over the email. So the idea really is to get anything that you ask still answered over the coming days, and that's pretty much it. And now to start off, I'll give you a quick introduction as to who I am, and talk a little bit to you about TaxScouts. So first about me, I'm Tram. I'm the CEO and co-founder of TaxScouts. I consider myself foremost to be a technology and product geek who has been lucky enough over the course of his career to be part of several amazing companies. Over a decade ago, I started my career at Skype. I worked in Estonia, in UK, in US, in various product roles. After this, I was amongst the first 10 people at TransferWise, now known as Wise, where I was responsible for pretty much everything customer-facing on the product. And now for the last 4 years, I have been doing TaxScouts. And if you think what unifies this, all of those things is my passion, which is not taxes, just to be clear. I like solving problems. As I mentioned, I'm a geek. I like technology. I like to solve problems with technology, and all of those three companies were solving, at least in my mind, big problems. Skype was trying to connect people at the time where voice over IP, meaning video calls, etc., was still a novelty. Wise was trying to make international money transfers affordable, easy, and fast for everyone. And well, now with taxes, is that, as you probably all know, taxes are a bit of a pain in the neck for everyone, and it's a huge problem across the world. And which I guess leads to TaxScouts as to why are we doing, or what is our kind of general reasons of focusing on it. Is the problem we're solving is really simple. Doing taxes either sucks or it's expensive, right? It sucks when you have to do it yourself, and it's expensive when you're trying to find a good accountant. And what TaxScouts does in a nutshell, it lets anyone to get their taxes sorted online, a few clicks by a professional accountant with a fraction of the normal costs. Or in other words, what we're just trying to do is making taxes easy and affordable, or preparing taxes easy and affordable for everyone. And I guess the penny dropped for us, the three founders, Dan, who is our CTO, and Kaupo, who is responsible for all the design and customer-facing elements of TaxScouts, is that when we realized that 80% or up to 80% of the work of the accountants has absolutely nothing to do with their tax expertise or their knowledge, basically what people are paying there for, but it has everything to do with everyday admin. Sales, collecting information about their customers, communications, payment processing, invoicing, etc. And most of those things have, to some extent or the other, already been solved with technology, right? If you think in terms of data collection, then most of the governments have exposed tax information to third parties over APIs. There is a development in open banking APIs as well, where banks are exposing the financial information of their customers upon their consent. And most of the big, let's say, technology companies where people are earning their money are also accessible over the internet. And like, what we really wondered is like why nobody has like put all of those pieces together and kind of automated it. And this is literally what TaxScouts does. So 80% of our product really is never seen by our customers. 80% of our product really is, think of this as one big automation engine for the accountants that tries to save as much time as possible for them on the bits that really can and should be automated. So it frees up the time for the professionals to do the stuff that they're actually good at, which is offering you advice, helping you, giving you support, human-to-human communication. And that's really it. And as a result, what we do with this automation is that lets us to allow customers to come to us and get their taxes done online. And given that we're automating a big chunk of the work for the accountants, we simply pass on those savings to our customers. And our business model is super straightforward. We work with a network of accountants. We don't have accountants on our payroll. We work with a network of partners across the country. And they are the ones who are kind of the biggest users, I guess, of our platform on the automation platform side. And we charge customers a low fixed fee from which we take a cut, and we pass on the savings to our customers. And that's pretty much it. And before I go to the Q&A, I think maybe the final point, I think what I believe makes us special, or what I believe, or why I'm so passionate or excited about what we're doing TaxScouts, is really two reasons. One is the uniqueness of approach is that we are not a platform that automates tax preparation or tax filing. What we're doing, we're automating work for the accountants. And what we have learned is that this work is fairly generic across all markets. The problems that accountants are facing here in the UK are pretty much the same that problems that the accountants are facing, at least time consumption wise, are in Spain, Germany, Italy, which means that our product is fairly easily transferable across the different markets. Now, if we would have to build a completely new product for every market from scratch, it will become very, very quickly very difficult to manage, mostly because all the countries have their own tax system and it's just really, really, really complicated. But basically by sidestepping the problem, the automating generic work of the accountants, whenever we launch in a new market, we just have to rebuild the customer facing aspect of it, which is not zero, meaning we still need to go to new markets from scratch. We need to market, people need to be aware of us, but we're solving a big challenge that has been a big challenge for a lot of companies about this in the past, which is having to build or maintain 20, 30, how many countries operating it, completely separate products, which we don't have to. And I think the second bit, what I like to think what makes us special as a result is because we're relying on the local expert networks in every given country, is we don't really have to focus on this ourselves. Means that we can already tap into, in any given market, into an existing community and existing network of professionals who are already doing this on day-to-day basis for a living. And as a result, this gives us like an immense scalability. So as you can imagine, tax is a very, very seasonal business. We don't have to hire like thousands of accountants to do taxes and then let them sit and do nothing for the rest of the year. We are working with the partners who are dealing with us on pay-as-you-go basis, which means when we have a lot of work, we are working together with them, and we have less work, then they are working less with us, and that's all that there is. So at the moment where we are at our stage, we launched in 2018. We have been operational for about 4 years here. before we decided to prove that this model actually can work internationally, not just only here in the UK. We raised our Series A from Octopus Ventures, who was our lead investor, and we launched in Spain. Within 5 months, we got from 0 to our first paying customers, and kind of the first 12 months we have been operational there, we began growing roughly 3 times as fast here as in the UK. So in our head, we have kind of proven that our model works internationally, not just in one country. And now we are basically in the process of getting to the point where we're putting together a playbook based on our experiences for the first 12 months in Spain, how it works, as to how to take on the rest of the European markets. And second bit really is about doubling down, I guess, on our success there. Given how well it works, we want to make the most of it over the next 12 months, so that by this time that we're going to be raising our Series B over the next 12 months, we have already a solid base on clear understanding how to go to the next market. And that's it. So that was a really, really quick intro, which I'm sure you have seen otherwise in the deck or in the discussions as well. But I think what I'm going to be doing now is just basically quickly switching over to a Q&A and start answering the questions that are coming in. I'm going to be taking them one by one, and I'll go through as many as I can. Feel free to add any additional questions as they come along. So first question is from Mark. Can you give us an idea of margins on a normal sale? Yes, absolutely. It's a great question, by the way. When we started out here in the UK, when we had launched very much an MVP version of the automation platforms, our margins were around 25%. And over the course of the years since we have operated, we have been gradually increasing our automation, and as a result, also gradually increasing our margin. So from the perspective of us, I think maybe the simplest way to look at this is that the more work we automate for accountants, the less time they have to spend on the customers, the more comfortable they're going to be paid less per customer. And over the last 4 years now, we have last year we ended about 50% margin. This year, I'm fairly comfortable our margin is going to be around 60% with that, and we will continue improving it. Now, at some point, it's probably going to be, the returns are going to be marginal. There is certainly like a theoretical limit to which we can get to. But I personally think it's probably around 70%. But this year, we still have not hit it, I think, is the most important thing. And the second quick comment on this is that given the fact that we have built now this platform over the course of the years, and I think a big testament to this is that when we launched in Spain, for example, last year, then we didn't have to start from a margin of 25%, right? Meaning we were immediately able to reuse vast majority of it, and we already started off. Our starting point was 40% rather than 25%, and what we're going to be doing over the next years now is basically bringing up the margins there to the same levels, hopefully, as in UK. So hopefully this answered your question. The second question is the path to profitability, again, which is a great question. I think the simplest way to answer this, inherently, our business, unit economics wise, is already profitable, right? In a sense that we could be profitable business today with just I want to say roughly double the amount of active paying customers every year that we have today. And the reason why we're not is that we simply keep growing the team and our acquisition as fast as we grow, right? So if you imagine us maybe, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, is that it will simply become a choice for us as to whether we want to be profitable or not, because in terms of the unit economics, we already could be profitable today. But as long as we can show like a triple-digit annualized growth, it just makes sense for us to continue focusing on that rather than kind of optimizing for the profitability. What is important about this, though, is that we're looking at this market by market. At the moment, I'm talking about the UK market, where we have been operational for 4 years. But in Spain, we only launched this year, and clearly we're not profitable there. Just the amount of fixed costs that we have there in terms of team are just too high relative to our volumes. And that's why we're so excited that we're growing there about 3 times as fast as we were growing in the UK during the first 12 months, because it tells us that the path to the same spot where we're here in the UK, instead of taking 4 years for that to achieve, we can probably get there in 2 or maybe 3 years. So long story short is that inherently our business is profitable in terms of the way we operate. It's a simple question is that how much money we continue investing both in our growth and both growing our team. I hope that answers your question. Then there is another question, which is that I'm just going to read it quickly through. First of all, thank you. Someone is basically saying that they love the fact that we have prioritized design from the very beginning, and they believe in design-led companies. And can you talk a bit about the thinking process about this on TaxScouts? I will touch on this briefly because I think it also touches on another important part. Is the design for us is simply an element of simplicity. Is it what we learned quite quickly when we started TaxScouts is a lot of the problems that customers are facing, especially when dealing with tax experts or advisors, is not the fact that they're not good. They actually are, most of them are very, very good at what they do. It's about communication, meaning most people don't know an awful lot about taxes and they want things to be simplified for them, meaning there is no need to use complicated jargon and terminology and things. And this led us to the kind of the principle is that I think it's called the KISS principle, keep things simple, stupid, or something of the sort. Keep it simple, stupid, I believe it is that we keep everything as simple as possible, starting from the communication to the way we design things to basically what the customer is seeing at any given moment. And from customers' perspective, what we really want them to be at any given point to fully understand what is going on, what is being asked of them, what they need to do, without being thrown a bunch of acronyms and complicated words towards them. And that's it. Because in the end, why people are using us, so the key reason why I believe people are using us is that they don't care about taxes in the sense that they just want this off their plate. And this is what platform is really, really trying to do. And having a user experience and design that is simple is a core element of basically also providing simple communication. But I want to emphasize that that is not, I think, our USP. While I think it's really an important element of our product, fundamentally still, it's about the differences. A lot of companies can build a nice UI, and there is no reason why someone can't do it tomorrow and design something nice. Fundamentally, it's about combining the simplicity of the product and the technology and use of it with the experts who are doing everything for you. So in the end, you have a simple, nice design. You click through this couple of times, you get to an expert and they take care of everything for you. And I think that's what really sets us apart. You build a relationship with your tax expert who you know will walk you through the entire process. There are no 10 different people telling you 10 different things. It's one person who you get, it's your personal expert. They're going to be helping you throughout the years to come, every year, and hopefully they will get to know you over time as well. Hopefully it answers your question. Again, I'm happy to follow up with those as separately if you feel that more questions need to be answered. Andrew is asking, you came from Intuit, which has TurboTax under an umbrella. Why hasn't Intuit made big moves into UK? Presumably that's a big threat if the market is as attractive as portrayed here. That is, by the way, Andrew, is a great question. And I cannot speak on behalf of Intuit, but for context, I was a head of product at Intuit for about a year before I started TaxScouts. And this is where I got exposed to the industry of taxes and accounting to begin with. And Intuit is more well known in the UK for building bookkeeping software like QuickBooks. But to your question, there are two reasons why they haven't done it in my mind. But first of all, any company who has enough time and resources could replicate what we do as of tomorrow. There is nothing that is stopping anyone starting to build a similar solution to TaxScouts, and whoever kind of has the most time, money, and resources ends up winning it. But the reason why, in my mind, Intuit hasn't done it falls into two categories. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, it's the size of the market. UK is what, 12 million people doing their taxes. And in US alone, you have more than 10 times of that people doing their taxes every year. So anything to become an appealing market, you would have to look Europe as a whole, where you have roughly the same ballpark of people doing their taxes every year, which is about 200 million in Europe. And I believe it's just under 200 million in the US. Now, the trick is what I explained earlier, I think, is that each of those markets have a completely different tax system. And TurboTax is purely a technology solution for preparing and filing taxes for the people. And it works well in the US because it's designed for that market. Now, to launch TurboTax in 29 different markets, you basically need to build completely separate 29 different versions of TurboTax in every market. And that is really, really, really complex thing to do. And each market in isolation is simply not appealing enough, I guess. So I think that, and again, I'm stressing, I think this is one of the big reasons. And again, coming back to the kind of the USP of TaxScouts, and this is a problem that we're sidestepping, right? We're not building a tax preparation software. We're building a workflow automation and process automation for accountants. And this is fairly generic across all markets. So we don't have to rebuild our entire product in every market. We can actually reuse most of what we have built in every market. And I think the difference in approach is the reason for that. And again, just to reiterate, there is nothing that would stop, in my mind, Intuit or any other company doing it as of tomorrow. But this leads me to the second point, is the reason why I believe it's not being done. We are doing taxes for individuals, which are individual people. And in many ways, this is what we call the tail end of the market, right? Meaning Intuit and the likes, they're mostly offering services for SMBs. Think QuickBooks that does their taxes. This is payroll, VAT, etc. And if you're thinking purely from the perspective of revenue per user, it is much more appealing to focus on one smaller market compared to US, let's say UK, and nail that completely, rather than trying to build out a 29 times as complicated service to launch it across entire Europe. So, and I think the second part to your question is that it's about where the money is, if you will, meaning even though revenue per user is significantly higher in the business sector, I believe personally that market as a whole, however, is much bigger in the consumer space. And that's why I come back to this 200 million people in Europe doing their taxes every year, right? And they are kind of pretty much left to their own devices. No big behemoth of the business is really focusing on them across Europe. As a result, what ends up happening in most of the markets, individuals are being served mostly by small firms, either they're accountancy firms, tax consultants, etc. And those two reasons, in my mind, are probably the most likely reasons why the big players haven't done anything in that space. And again, but in the spirit of transparency, there is nothing stopping them to do this, in my mind, day after tomorrow, but so far they haven't. But that is certainly a risk that they would. The next question again is from Andrew, is that given the seasonality of your revenues, are there any other revenue streams that you can activate to unlock the more regular revenue throughout the remaining of the year? Again, Andrew, I think it's a great question and something that has been top of my mind from pretty much day one. There are two parts again to this answer, and I think both are equally crucial. Answer number one is a thing that we will never be able to fix or change is the seasonality of doing taxes. If there is a tax season where people are doing taxes, this is when they do it. And it will not be within our power to, odds are, to go to the governments and say, hey, please make people to do their taxes evenly throughout the year. Now, that said, there are two important things. One, in most markets, the tax seasons happen to be at different times. In UK, for example, the peak tax season is right now in December, January. Everyone is doing their taxes just about now. It represents about, I want to think, about 40% of our revenue here in the UK, happening over the course of 2 months. That said, the peak example in Spain is May, June, right? Peak in France is early in the spring. What I'm trying to say is that what we can do, though, is that if we launch across multiple markets, we can always be in a position where at least in one market, we're in peak or close to peak. So this is really crucial part of our overall strategy, by the way, is that when we go across Europe, is that we are able to, again, to sidestep the problem in a way by being at any given point in a market where there is a peak season at the time. The second part to our question is, are there any other revenue streams that we can unlock? Short answer, yes, we absolutely can. And we actually have started exploring that. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Example number one is one of the reasons why we launched a tax advice service here in the UK, I want to say 5 months back, and we didn't do any meaningful marketing around this, is that what we learned, a lot of people, because we have a network of tax experts that we work with, and they are available to offer advice and help, and people are looking for advice and help without necessarily the need of doing taxes. And given that we have this network of tax experts on our platform, we saw no reason why not provide the means with a platform to let people really easily to book a time online, have a video call with a certified expert who basically can give them advice on pretty much anything, starting from their tax planning, ending with like figuring out ways, what is the kind of the simplest way for me, for example, to start as a self-employed, what are the things we can do. So we certainly can move into the adjacent areas, which is around advice and help in general. So this is something that since we launched, I think within I want to say couple, but I think maybe 3+ months without almost any marketing, it made up almost 10% of our revenues here in the UK. And we are probably going to be expanding this in all the new markets that we're going to be launching. I mean, the next for sure is going to be Spain. The second part of the answer is that there are also every market has a slightly different seasonality dynamics. For example, in Spain today, self-employed, there are 3 million of them compared to 4 million in the UK. The self-employed have to do taxes not just once a year, but they have to do taxes every quarter, and almost every single one of them is also VAT eligible, meaning they have to do their taxes like basically every 3 months. Which means that the engagement with us is not once a year, fire and forget, come back next year. It is pretty much consistent. You need to keep track of your finances. You need to understand where you are so that at the end of every quarter, your taxes can be filed. So we launched in Spain a subscription service purely catered for self-employed that helps them with everything from setting up to making sure that they're up to date with their taxes. You have your tax expert available for you at any given moment. And this is much less seasonal, as you can imagine, than doing taxes. And the good news is that in UK, the self-employed are going to be having a very, very similar tax system in the UK as part of what is called Making Tax Digital, that currently is scheduled to launch in, I want to say, April 2024, where every self-employed and landlord will have to update their tax situation every quarter. So that was actually one of the reasons why we launched in Spain, so that we would be able to see how this product works there. And so far it's been working great, and making sure that we can basically transport this off over here. And so these are the two things that I'm immediately come to my mind as specific examples. And the final bit of my answer really is that obviously our long-term goal really is to be in a position where kind of the entire your entire tax situation is something that we can take care of fully, meaning you can come to our platform, you log in, you immediately see what your financial situation is, whatever you're going to need your help with, understanding real time what your tax calculation is, you want help with tax planning, tax advice. So whatever we can help them with, we are going to be helping them with. But those two things are the immediate practical things that we are seeing as an opportunity, and we're going to be acting on over the next 12 months. I hope that this answers your second question, Andrew, as well. Anonymous question, 3 times how many customers in Spain? I think the best way to answer this question is what I'm comparing here, like for like, is that in year 1, we ended up in UK with 80K revenue after the first 12 months of operation, given that we charge 100 quid per tax return per year. So I think it's fairly easy to calculate the user numbers there for our year 1. What we're going to be ending up our first 12 months, it looks like, is about just over 200K in Spain. So basically what I'm saying is that our growth rate for the first 12 months has been 3x of what it was in the UK. And this is what I was referring to. Hopefully it answers your question. The next one, what additional revenue lines are you looking at apart from tax advice to make the business less seasonal? So part of it I already answered in terms of looking for in every different market. First of all, the seasonality is different. Our immediate focus is going to be on helping out the self-employed because they seem to be a very big customer segment in every single market. Just for context, in UK, they're about, I want to say 40% of our customer base are self-employed. Just to be clear, we're not just self-employed. We cater for everyone, landlords, crypto traders, people having capital gains, selling houses, high income earners, or basically anyone who whatever needs to do taxes. But in general, self-employed seems to be the single biggest customer segment that we want to focus on next. And our immediate view is to basically offer additional services for them that basically help them throughout the year. I hope this answers your question. Another one, what's the story behind the name of TaxScouts? The really honest answer is that me and Dan, our CTO, when we started TaxScouts, we started thinking of how to name the company, and we simply looked at what are the available domains. I think the first name that we thought of was Tax Butler. And I believe it was taken. And then we started looking at different things that had the word tax in it. And I think TaxScouts ended up being a domain that was available. The trademark wasn't registered, etc. And that's it. And at the time, also, we were also thinking about like how we envisioned our business and what we thought of ourselves. And we really thought we're this like well-meaning, always eager to please and help type of company. We're trying to make sure that people get their problems sorted with their taxes, and kind of Scouts, at least for me at that time, then stuck in my head as an image after having just seen the movie Up. I'm not sure, or cartoon Up. I'm not sure if you have seen, where you have this over-eager and optimistic Boy Scout who is helping elderly people with their problems. And I think this is, to my recollection, as to how we ended up getting TaxScouts as a name registered. So there wasn't any kind of too serious thinking about the kind of the long term of this is what the brand identity is going to be, etc. It was more around domain was available. We thought it sounds good enough, and rest is pretty much history. Another question is from Shahad. And as some are new investors, do you provide support and advice for TaxScouts with the IS? Absolutely, we do. And in the spirit of transparency, like one of the key reasons why we very opportunistically decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign and let mostly our customers and our existing accounting partners to invest in us is that what we realized, we want to be in front of as many people as possible. And a lot of people who know about our service seem to think that we can only help when you have either a simple tax return, or we can only help you when you're self-employed. No, like our entire business model, given that we rely on the experts who actually will do the taxes for you and we automate the work for them, is that we can pretty much do anyone's taxes, right? And that actually is something that sets us apart from the competition. Instead of building a product that focuses very, very narrowly on one customer segment, our product focuses on automating the work for the accountants, and the customer facing aspect of this is making sure that we get the right information out of you in order for your accountant to be able to help you. So short answer to your question, absolutely. We can help with that, and we have plenty of customers amongst our current users who are using exactly for these purposes, meaning they want to get their EIS applied to their income tax and get these deducted, and that's pretty much what TaxScouts is for. So great question, and I use this opportunity to plug TaxScouts as well. Hope you don't mind. Next one, what revenue lines of products are you aiming to have in Spain before they raise or before they enter the next market? Partially, I think I already answered it in a sense that we launched a subscription product for the self-employed. We already have there. What we launched there is also a very similar, almost identical product to the UK, where we simply do your annual taxes. So these two are in line. Odds are that what we are going to be launching in Spain is probably, and please don't quote me on that in terms of timelines, but we want to do this over the course of the next 12 months, meaning over the course of this calendar year, to launch a premium service. Is that at the moment, we are helping the self-employed to get their taxes done every quarter, but the level of automation on our platform, meaning keeping track of your taxes real time without you having to put in any effort, or basically managing your income and expenses and being able to pull in your financial data from third parties, has not yet been implemented. So most likely the next thing you're going to see from us in Spain is going to be what we call a premium version of that service, but the target audience is still going to be the same. So think of it this way, that in addition to simply doing the taxes for the self-employed and automating the process for the accountants, we also want to provide a platform for them where not only that the accountants wouldn't have to do any work to get their taxes sorted, we really want to be in a position where the self-employed wouldn't have to do any taxes sorted for them. So hopefully this answers your question. And by the way, before I take the next one, apologies for rattling through those questions really quickly. I'm trying to get as many of them answered, as I'm mindful that you are spending your time here. And if you have asked a question, I'll try to answer it as quickly as possible. If you have any other follow-up questions, please do add them here. I would be super happy to address them. And next one is from from William. Thanks so much for offering us this opportunity to hear from you. Really like a business model. So can I understand the scalability? How many accountants do you have in the UK? How easy it is to recruit new accountants? Do you pay them the same, notwithstanding complexity of the tax returns? So I'm going to be a little bit coy about answering this question. There's some things that I'm not going to be comfortable disclosing, but I can give you, I think, almost everything that you're asking here. So I'll start with the last bits, which is easier. Like, do we pay the same to our accountants with the complexity of the tax return? Short answer is yes. And the best way to, I think, to articulate what it actually means is I think there is a bit of a dirty little secret, I guess, in the accountancy industry, that customers, assuming that they're being charged based on the complexity of their tax return. That is not entirely true. I can give you a very simple example. Let's say I'm a landlord who has a property somewhere in, let's say, Hastings, and I have, basically, I'm saving for my pension, and I have got a buy-to-let property somewhere in Hastings, and I have rented it out. Now, doing a property tax return, if you look around in the market, you can see it clearly, is that almost immediately the prices double, just because of the simple fact that your tax, that you're doing a property tax return. However, now if you compare this to, let's say, a tax return of an Uber driver, normally the prices are roughly half of that. And it doesn't have to be an Uber driver, it can be a rider of like Uber Eats, Deliveroo, whatever. The price difference on average can be around 2x. While reality of it is that in terms of work for the tax expert, quite often doing the tax returns for a delivery rider is actually much more admin. They have literally hundreds of trips, they have a bunch of receipts, and the work is actually much higher. While with the landlord, you have your 12 payments of rent per year, maybe some receipts that you did in terms of renovation. The only difference for accountants is simply filling out a different form. So what I'm trying to get at is it's kind of a myth to some extent that people are being charged based on the complexity. People are being charged, in our view, the price of accountant correlates much more closely with the size of the wallet of the customer than the complexity of the tax return. And this understanding is what allows us to get to the point when we realize that, listen, the amount of tax returns that are actually complex, that take a lot of time for the customers, and there are plenty of them, is not necessarily the same as the customers perceive. So as a result, the way we operate is that we are paying our accountants a fixed amount, regardless of the type of the customers that they're getting in. Now, you might think, that's not necessarily fair, that some of them will be complex for different reasons. Someone has a really complex tax situation, income from 5 different countries, renting out property, capital gains, crypto. That is true. But if you look as an average, let's say, tax partner that is working with us, if I'm doing 100 tax returns a month, is that vast majority of those customers that you're dealing with, because we automate so much work for you, and they actually don't take that much of the time. And the small fraction of those customers where you actually have to spend a little bit more time for, the time that we save actually makes up for it quite a bit. So hopefully my answer to the last part of the question makes sense. The second is the part of the question that you had is, so I can understand scalability, how many accountants that you have here in the UK. I can give you a total number. I think we're working at the moment with about 100 partners in the UK, and it's a mix of small accountancy practices and solo practitioners. We're mostly working with smaller firms for one simple reason, is that what we have learned is that customers want to be able to put a face to a name. And if you're working with a very large company who outsource big parts of their work, is that then one person may end up interacting with 5 different people over the course of doing their taxes. Someone is onboarding them, someone is doing a second thing and a third thing, and no one really has a full picture. And what we really want to do is when the customer comes to us, when they show them that this is Pete, that's your tax expert, they're going to be helping you, is that that's the person who's actually going to be doing your taxes. And they are going to be the same person you can come back to next year, and they already know who you are, and they can actually help you with that. And that's the reason for us working with them. And the second thing is that just statistically, if you look at the overall accountancy practice market in the UK, I think there are about 40,000 accountancy practices. And I think 70–80% of them are small, meaning 1 to 7, 1 to 10. And this is simply where the majority of the practices, what they in reality look like, are like that. And how easy it is to recruit the new accountants. This was actually one of the things we were most afraid of when we launched TaxScouts, is that we have 2 sides to our product. We were really worried that how are we going to be able to find and recruit them? The good news is, in reality, this has turned out to be a complete non-problem for us. It was difficult for us maybe for the first 6 months, where we had to actively find them. I mean, we were a completely unknown company, nobody has heard of us, and when basically random guys come up to you and say, hey, do you want to partner with us, a company you never heard of that didn't exist 6 months ago, as you can imagine, it's a bit challenging. But over the last 2 years, the situation has completely reversed. We have more potential partners who want to work with us than we choose to onboard. So we can be in a position where we choose, and we actually are in a position where we choose who we work with. And that is extremely crucial, right? Because if you think of in terms of the value of our customers are getting out of us and the experience that they're having, yes, while our technical product is half of it, making sure it's smooth, it's easy, another half of it is what is the quality of the person that you're working with on the other end. And that is absolutely essential for us. So we need to make sure that we get to work with the right type of partners. And now we have been fortunately in a position for at least last 2 years to be exactly that, is that we select the partner to work with, we onboard them to our platform, we put them on a trial period where we kind of at smaller scale see how they operate, etc. So, and I think it's pretty scalable, given that we're working now with 100 partners. We're able to easily manage the volumes that we're having today. So it shouldn't be too hard for us to do 10x of that, and we are not even going to be scraping the kind of even a subset of the total market. Hopefully I was able to answer this question. Apologies if I spent a little bit more time on this than on the other questions, but I think it was a good question, and something that I'm actually quite excited about, and gives a little bit of insight how we operate as well. Next one, how much work does the customer have to do versus the accountant? It varies. Like for about 10% of our customers, we can get their taxes done in a way that they don't have to do almost anything, right? Meaning they literally get an email from us when we say, your tax return has been drafted for you, please review and approve. And they basically click approve, pay, and the accountant files the taxes, and the amount of work that it takes is just a couple of minutes on both ends. So on one end of the spectrum, we have the types of customers for whom we have already all the information from online sources. They've been a customer, we know what their situation is, and we're able to draft up automatically. On the other end of the spectrum, we have those extremely complicated tax returns where you may need to have work on both ends. So I don't really have a simple answer to this. So that's why I'm saying it varies. But in the end, what we are trying to do is, while our platform is automating the work for accountants, and just going to give you a simple example, as part of automating the work for the accountants, we're also automating the work for our users. Right? When we, for example, are pulling in financial information from third parties, then this is, yes, to automate the work for the accountant, so that they wouldn't have to ask the customer for this information. But by the byproduct of this also is that the customer does not have to provide this information to them. So long story short, it varies hugely customer by customer, and our kind of overall strategy is what we want to do is gradually to improve the level of automation, both for the customer accountants, and kind of the long la land type of vision and dream is that we can do taxes for almost anyone with almost zero input from the customer. We're very, very, very far away from that. How we are planning to do that, or what is our kind of overall strategy around this, is twofold. It's data collection and partnerships. For example, we have done commercial partnerships at the moment with several, let's say, gig economy platforms, like I want to say, I can't remember from the top of my head. I think Deliveroo is one of them. Just Eat, I believe, is one of them, etc. But what we really want to do is, and what we're now doing this year, is building up direct integrations into them, so we can pull in the financial information from there, so the customer wouldn't have to provide it. At the moment, we're working in Spain, and the beauty of this is that a lot of those companies are international companies, which means that if we solve this problem in one country, we can basically do it in another country as well. Meaning an Uber driver, for example, works using the same platform in effect in UK as it is working in Spain. That said, we're at the very, 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 very beginning of this journey. Kind of the first step for us was to get our work done with the local governments, meaning that we are able to share and expose and pull in the information the government collects about the customers. And kind of the next step for us is going to be looking at this partner by partner. I'm actually discussing our partnership strategy at length in one of the discussions in one of the Crowdcube discussions, so feel free to have a look at this yourself as well. Again, hopefully this answers your question. But again, to summarize it, it really depends. We try to minimize it to both, but we're doing it through the lens of making sure that we automate the work for the accountant, because this is what gives us a competitive advantage. The less work they have to do, by extension, less work the customers have to do it as well. But I don't have like a single number to that, like 80% is customer, 20% accountant, or 50-50. I just don't have a good answer to that, I guess. So apologies for that. Another question is, what kind of hires are you making? What are the areas of the team that you're prioritizing? Two parts of the answer, I guess, to that. One, in Spain, it's really straightforward. It's like we are going to be expanding across the board. We're basically going to double the team. We have very, very small team in place there at the moment. I believe it's 8 people. We have like one core person for every key function. We have been very lean in terms of making everything happen. And given that we really want to scale up there, we just need to more engineers so we can build out the products, more people doing marketing, more operations, etc. So across the board in Spain. The second thing really is in preparation for the further international expansion is yes, we have launched in one market, but if we want to launch in, let's say, 2 or 3 markets going forward, is that we really learned a lot from our launch in Spain. And what we have learned is that you don't need to necessarily go into the market and figure things out on the go. You can actually do a lot of prep work beforehand. So what we want to make sure of is that basically to strengthen our team with people who will help us looking at the next market and preparing for them. So in my head, I'm thinking about this as strengthening our team for the further European expansion. And that's the second part. And the third part is in the UK. I think here we're much less aggressive with our overall growth of the team, meaning is that we have a very, very solid team already in place. We don't really need to massively scale the team up in order to serve, let's say, 5 or 10 times more customers. However, given that we really want to start focusing on building kind of additional services out to our customers, is we're probably mostly going to be focusing on our engineering and product development team and expanding our marketing team a little bit as well. But I think those 3 areas, meaning in Spain, massively across the board everywhere, then we're looking to basically hire people who will help us expanding into the rest of the market. So when we start raising the next round for the further expansion, we wouldn't have to start from square one, but we already have everything in place to basically to go. And 3, in UK, given that we really don't massively need to grow here, kind of the team, is that we're focusing mostly on making the product better and also increasing in some areas like marketing. Hopefully that answers your question. UPS compared to I assume this means unique selling point. Chandni is asking UPS compared to customers. I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. I apologize for that. So if you're going to ask it again, I'll scroll down and make sure to answer it. So I'm going to skip it for now, but I'll keep an eye out. If you're going to rephrase the question in a way that I can answer it, I'll try to follow up with you if you can do this over the next minute or so. Meanwhile, what I will do, I'll take up the next question, is that you talk about the government being your main competition. Can you elaborate more about the possibility scenario that you're anticipating? And this is probably going to be the last question I'm going to answer around this, given that we're out of time. So I'll try to make it brief. And maybe I'm going to start out with somewhat controversial statement, which is I personally don't think that TaxScouts as a company should exist, right? And it is something, this is a conversation that we have here sometimes internally, is that in my personal belief is that if governments did their jobs, like we wouldn't be in a position where people basically need to tell the government that this is how much money I earned, I did my calculations, how much taxes I need to pay, and spend time on this. I mean, there is nothing in theory that would stop governments for actually having all this information for them, right? They can pass legislature, making banks, making big companies reporting this information to them like all the employers are already doing. They can build the technology to do that. And in Estonia, where I'm from, and this was actually part that inspired me to start TaxScouts, is that this is what I'm used to, meaning is that I spend literally a few minutes doing my taxes because all the information is already there. So in that sense, like we shouldn't really exist as a company if the government did their jobs well. And I'm not just talking about you, overall. In my mind, this is an entirely solvable problem as is. But when I speak about the government being our main competition, I look at this from a different angle. Yes, we are competing obviously with tax advisors, we're competing with all kinds of platforms for helping with taxes. But in most markets, big chunk of the people are doing taxes themselves, which means that most of them are using whatever platforms government is providing them to do their taxes. And at the moment we see about a third of our customers are people who are doing their taxes for the first time, but also about a third of our customers are people who have been doing their taxes themselves, using whatever government makes it available for them, but they've gotten frustrated and they really don't want to deal with that anymore. And they're looking for an alternative that is free, or meaning is that costs as little as possible. And this is what I mean, we're competing with the government. The government has a distinct competitive advantage over us in terms of being able to offer a free service and theoretically offer a service that does everything for our customers, but they don't. And probably longest term, in my mind, one of our biggest threats, if you ask me, is that if the government start doing their jobs the way I personally, that's my personal opinion, envision that the governments should be doing. So in that sense, governments are our biggest scenarios. In terms of anticipation, there is no reason, as I mentioned, why governments couldn't start moving towards it. But our experience so far is that while most of the governments are making an amazing, genuinely great steps in terms of moving towards that, the progress simply is too slow, given how quickly technology is advancing. So if I were to make a gut feel, and that's just my gut feel estimate, and this is just that, I think what is going to be happening, there will be this internal progress from the perspective of the governments moving ever closer and closer and closer to the point where it's almost easy and seamless. But as the technology advances, and also as normally tax systems tend to be getting more complicated over time, they're never going to be quite there. So in some places, the gap may completely disappear. But I think overall, given the problem has been around for hundreds of years, and like IT as such has been around for like in a meaningful way for like last quarter of a century, and we haven't seen resolved, I think that's how it's most likely going to be staying as well. And I believe that this is it. I hope I was able to answer your question. I'm mindful that there are a bunch of questions that I was not able to answer right now. Sorry about that. I'll try to follow up with as many of them as possible in our crowdfunding platform discussion. So I massively, by the way, thank you for participating in this Q&A. It was a great joy to actually answer these questions. I enjoyed talking about TaxScouts, and feel free to follow up with me directly on the Crowdcube discussions platform. I will try to answer anything I can. And again, hopefully this gave you some sense of what TaxScouts is about, what I am about, and what we're trying to achieve here.